Before we begin, I just want to mention today we're going to be talking about a lot of different legal aspects, and we wanted to remind you that none of us are attorneys, and we strongly encourage you to consult your own attorney to verify anything we're discussing.
Hey, this is Adam Cruz, owner-broker of the Hermann London Real Estate Group and host of the St. Louis Realtor podcast.
And this is Shannon St. Pierre, a realtor at Hermann London and co-host of the St. Louis Realtor podcast.
Before we begin, we just want to say that we are realtors, which is different from someone who is simply an agent. The term realtor identifies a real estate professional who is a member of the National Association of Realtors and subscribes to its strict code of ethics.
And even though it's called the St. Louis Realtor podcast, this show is for everyone who's interested in real estate. Buyers, sellers, realtors, HGTV watchers, everyone.
So if this specific episode isn't exactly what you're looking for, go through our past episodes and I guarantee you'll find a topic that interests you.
And if there's a topic you want us to cover, email us at podcast@hermannlondon.com. That's Hermann, Hermann, London.com. And we'll talk about it on an upcoming episode.
Thanks for listening and enjoy.
Live from the rooftop of the Hermann London Real Estate Group in beautiful downtown Maplewood, it's the St. Louis Realtor Podcast with Adam Cruz and Shannon St. Pierre.
Welcome everybody to the St. Louis Realtor Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Cruz, broker and owner of Hermann London Realtors, here with my co-host, Shannon St. Pierre.
Hello.
Say hi, Shannon. Shannon is a friendly local realtor, investor, rehabber, all of the above, right?
Correct.
And we are excited today because if you haven't seen the news story from KMOV, they did a news story recently about serial squatters. And we have the people from the news story here, Jeff and Shelly. And welcome, guys. Thank you very much for coming in and talking about your story. We wanted to bring you in today to learn about what happened, and we wanted to figure out how we can help this not happen to other people. But if you don't mind, kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background.
My name's Jeff Coffman, obviously. I got into real estate investing late 2014. Started off with just doing quick fix and flips and stuff like that, and been rolling along here. I finally quit my job. I was able to quit my job 2.5 years ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. And everything's rolling along fine. Finally, we got to the point where we were able to get Shelly to quit her job.
Yeah.
Oh, double congratulations.
It's a big step. Yeah. As of August 1st of 2019.
Right. So if you time this story right and when this all started happening, it was right around that time. I mean, we started off with a huge challenge, right off the bat.
Oh, that's interesting. So you mainly focus on fix and flips?
Primarily, yes.
Okay, so do you do buy and holds as well?
I do. I do a lot of creative financing, so that's kind of my gig. I really like the creative side of things. So.
And what do you mean by creative financing?
I love to do subject to deals, targeting pre-foreclosures and distressed homeowners.
Is that how you find your properties?
Buy and hold stuff, yes.
Okay.
I do a lot of my own marketing. Well, I do all of my own marketing.
So do you do wholesaling as well?
I do. It's just not my favorite thing to do. It's a really, really tough business. I mean,
right.
It's super high speed, and it's just I don't find it fun.
Yeah.
You can tell we're kind of real estate nerds because you're like, oh, real estate? Well, we'd like to talk more about that, right?
Yeah.
And, you mentioned subject twos. That's something we've never actually done a podcast on. But in two sentences or whatever, you're basically buying a property subject to the existing mortgage.
Correct.
Right? Do you have to give the homeowner something? Or
on
Of
occasion.
a short sale?
Yeah, so on occasion, I try to avoid hurting credit if at all possible. So I avoid short sales. Sometimes it's just, it just calls for a short sale. There's nothing you can do. I've had houses given to me for free, and I've had houses where I've paid a seller out to walk. So it just all depends. But you are correct. You just take over. You're taking over someone's mortgage. or you're
But you're not
taking
assuming the mortgage, are
correct.
you?
No.
Okay.
No.
Stays
So
in their name.
What I like to say is we don't assume the mortgage, we assume the debt.
Okay,
That's
so
what
you
we
take
do.
on the debts.
Correct.
And when does it transfer out of their name?
As soon as possible. As soon as we can get it done. That's part of my kind of part of my shtick is I can make it a super fast process. I do all my own closings. Do mostly kitchen table closings, as some people might know them.
So it's just basically a contract between you and the owner of the home.
Correct.
Is
Yeah.
what you mean by a kitchen table contract, or
Well,
No, he's saying
it's
you don't
it's
involve
actually
title companies, right?
correct.
you don't.
I normally, if I'm being honest, I don't buy title policies very often anymore. I do my title search. I actually go out and pay for the title search. Have them examine it and go over it with me. Make sure I'm totally comfortable with whatever's on title, and just pay them outright for the title search and exam. And
Okay.
I usually don't buy a
Wow.
policy.
We're going to have you back
Yeah,
for a whole nother
like,
podcast.
Let's
on
do it.
This
Let's
super
do it.
interesting way that you're doing real estate investing. But we've got to get today into this whole. This is a podcast all about squatters and serial squatters, right? And that's I guess the term we're using because we'll find out how. But do you want to talk a little bit about yourself, Shelly?
It's kind of funny with this. When Jeff started this business, I was still in corporate management, loving that role, but just seeing some of the success that Jeff was having, and the purpose of the company was definitely a motivating factor. So being able to see a certain segment of helping folks being able to rehab homes in the community and then helping folks get into them really appealed to me. So I liked that part of the vision. So after some peer pressure, I guess, a little bit, I kind of decided to take the jump. So it's been an interesting adventure for the last 6 months.
real estate's always an adventure?
Yes, it is.
I mean,
yes, it is.
I don't care, no matter
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Totally.
Yeah.
So what happened? Why are we here
Well, and
today?
I think what's interesting about this too, when we talk about squatters, I think immediately, Adam, what comes to your mind is usually someone taking over a vacant property, and you find that they've been quote unquote squatting in the property.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, is traditionally what we think of as a squatter. I mean, is that even fair for you to say, Jeff and Shelly, is what you probably had in your head and never thought of this high end, whatever it almost as a high end squatter?
Previously, my thought was, Jeff goes in to take a look at these houses, and there's evidence that people are living there, in not necessarily the best conditions. That stereotype is not our situation
Yeah.
at
Right,
all.
which is
That's
why
kind
this
of
is
like a
unique.
homeless person stumbles into a house to stay
Correct.
warm or something like that.
Correct.
This is like professional squatting.
This is professional squatting with very malice intent and with very beautiful homes. This home in particularly is absolutely a stunning home. So not at all what you would expect to think of as a quote-unquote squatter.
Yeah, this is not your typical. Definitely, what you guys described is really what I thought. I've been in
What
the houses,
existed.
right.
And sure,
I bought
work in
houses
the-
with.
Yes,
yeah,
I know.
yeah.
So tell us what happened.
Sure. Where to begin?
Let's start from the beginning. We got a great opportunity to do a rehab on a beautiful home in Hazelwood.
Yeah. So this was December of. Actually, I've been following up with this seller for almost a year. Was finally able to get this home at a good price, and we had a 6-month long rehab on it. This was purchased through using private funds. Really good. Just a great private lender. We worked on this thing for about 6 months.
Rehabbing it.
Mm-hmm. And it came out beautifully, as she said. I mean, it came out to be just a dynamite looking
the
house.
photos in the story on
Yes.
KMOV.com
Beautiful.
were really beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a nice house.
They have good taste.
Yes, they
Yes.
have very good taste. We'll give them that.
So to get into the meat of the story, approximately 2 months before we were done with this house. So around April timeframe, somewhere in
April
that
of-
March of 2019. So
Okay, 2019, last year.
March, April, in
Okay.
that time frame. I all these dates are running together on me. I was approached by this gentleman, Jordan Harris, and he walked into the house, knocked on the door, walked into the house.
You had a sign in the yard or something, or how did he?
I had a dumpster in the driveway.
Oh,
That
wow.
was it.
That was it?
The house wasn't for sale. We were still in the middle of we're coming off the last third of, the first 2/3 of completing this project.
Yeah.
And we still had a dumpster in it. We keep a dumpster in the driveway almost the entire time we're working on a house.
Yeah.
So he knocks on the door, comes in the house, and asks when the house is going to be done. He'd like to come back and see it. And I said, well, we're about, a month to 2 months out, depending on, what our finished work looks like. So fast forward, we get the rehab done. I mean, we are 2 days from having this thing done. The guy shows back up at our door. I mean,
right on schedule.
Like clockwork.
Oh,
I couldn't
wow.
believe it. I thought it was just long gone, and
Right.
I never followed up with him or anything.
Sure, and it's very typical. People stop by, hey, what you doing?
Right.
You selling it? When's it going to be on the market?
Right.
Typical questions.
Yep.
But I've never had someone show up literally perfect timing.
I don't know if that was intended. I don't know if he maybe had it on his
Probably.
calendar or something. I have no idea. So he walks in, says he's really interested in it. He's kind of sees what's going on. I walk him around the house. He, quote, falls in love with it and says, I'd like to put a contract on it. And, as a rehabber,
Mm-hmm.
that is the number one. I mean, that is the greatest thing that you can possibly hear.
Right.
So immediately, in retrospect, I look back now, my guard is automatically, I'm like, I'm feeling good. Like, all right.
This is great.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I don't have to list this thing. I can just, sell it. We get further into the process. He actually, I send him a contract. I don't know how maybe like a week later.
And for clarification, are you a licensed real estate agent, or
I'm
you
not.
just do this all your own contract, right?
Correct. This is
okay.
not a SLAR contract or anything like that. It's my own that I had created.
Okay.
Puts the house under contract, and there's no indication really right up front that there's anything going on.
I mean, do you ask for a pre-approval letter?
I did. And that's where I was going
You
next.
got the pre-approval letter.
I got the pre-approval letter,
And you do what agents do is you look at it and you go, okay,
I did.
next step, right?
Right. I looked at it and I go, okay, this is great, but I'm going to need to speak with your lender. I want to speak with your lender. And everybody
Okay.
would know who this lender is. They're pretty large in the St. Louis area.
Okay.
So I call up the lender, and lender's like, yeah, he's great. Everything's good. And, we'll honor that pre-approval as long as he's got this, some credit issue, some credit blemish that they've got to get straightened out.
But he didn't allude to that it was a large blemish or some blemish that might be a large hurdle.
Correct. It was I want to say it was an IRS lien. I've learned since that that's not actually what it was. It has something to do with the state of Missouri and the Division of Economic Security.
Okay.
But there was this lien in place.
Okay.
But
you had the lender's
not only that, but the lender had also
verification.
The lender,
which is usually, when we're in question, we do the same thing. Call the lender and just kind of try and feel out the lender on how credible a buyer is.
Right. And the lender had checked into this lien as well, apparently, and it was valid.
Okay.
There was some validity to him actually writing this pre-approval letter. So at this point, I'm feeling good. And I said, okay, let's do this. We'll need, this amount of earnest money up front and this and that. About 3 to 4 days later, Jordan contacts me and he says, hey, I notified my, I think he said it was an apartment at the time. I've learned that he jumps around. He has a different story for everybody. That I have to be out by this date. And he said, I'm not going to have my credit issue resolved in that amount of time. Can I take possession prior to closing? And I said, no. I said, no. But what I will do is I'll write you a 30-day lease. If we can't get this house closed in that 30 days, you got to go. You got to leave. And that was the beginning of my troubles.
So
That's how it all started.
Wildly interesting. So we'll back up for possession prior to close is something that does come up even for us as real estate agents. Occasionally we have, and it is typically, we have to get out of our apartment by the 30th, not closing until the 2nd or something of the sort. We come up against it only rarely and occasionally. But Adam, your viewpoint on it is...
Well, that's like a forbidden form to use, which is why, like, you must have known that.
2164.
That's why you said no, right?
Yeah. Right. Well, now the St. Louis Real Estate in the Missouri Commission does have a form, but they actually say on the form, we do not recommend this or doing this.
So you said no, but you wanted to kind of honor his ability to move in, and you thought you'd be more protected through using a lease.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So, at least I had some sort of legal binding contract to be able to hold him to if I had to evict him. That was my line of
lease terms.
Right.
Okay.
And at that time, in retrospect, stupid mistake, but he was still very what's the word I'm looking for? He was still very
forthright. I mean, being open, being honest, wanting to collaborate.
This guy just said all the right things.
Yeah, this wasn't really like it seems too good to be true, but I'm going to go with it situation. It sounds like it was kind of more like normal. He had a little bit of problems, right, which made it not too good to be true. And you guys were communicating and all that stuff. So.
Right.
Okay, keep going.
And
so you write a lease,
and
then when you typically write a lease, do you do all the background checks normally on some of your buy and holds? So coming back to, yes.
I do. And I found a couple of previous evictions. One was in St. Charles. One was in, one was in St. Louis County.
So you did do a background check prior?
It wasn't.
A fool.
Now, it wasn't as thorough as I should have done. So
hindsight's always 20/20, right?
So,
but you did do attempt some sort of background check that should have brought up some red flags.
Right.
Had there
been and something. It did. I guess my thing, and he was very open about that too. He said, I have had some problems in my past, but I'm not trying to rent a property from you. I'm trying to, I want to buy this from you. I want it. And, at that point.
I mean, that's a pretty good line, right? Like, that's a valid point.
There are so many little... this guy's like a master. He could be a master salesman. I mean, he really. There's a lot of things that I found really odd that he said, but there were a lot of things like, wow, this is really making sense, But
we've talked before about how, like, criminals, if they would just put their superpowers to good use, they would be more successful. But
imagine the change in the world. Absolutely. But this is where it comes back to my comment about malice intent.
Yeah, the one thing that really struck me was, I'm looking around this office. You have artwork on the walls. You have pictures on the walls. When he finally did move in, he asked me, "Will you help me hang some pictures on the walls?" And I said, "No." I said, "I really don't want holes in the walls, to begin with." So my point behind that is he didn't have enough sense to be able to hang his own pictures. He didn't know how to do that, but he's organized this whole scheme, this whole master plan of how he acquires these houses. I just thought that was something that really stuck out in my mind.
Planting seeds that I'm buying this house. This is my house. I want to hang my pictures.
But that's not my point. My point is that you don't have enough sense to know how to hang pictures, but you can
scam,
be this master manipulator, and you have this whole system. I mean, I'm talking from the acquisition of the house all the way through the eviction was just, and we'll get into the details of it a little bit more, but I actually had to go to trial with this guy to get him evicted.
Yeah, so you write a 30-day lease, right? And so then he moves in, and you do the background check. You do like the typical stuff that you would do if you were going to lease out a property, but you're doing it for 30 days.
Correct.
So he moves in?
He does.
Okay. With his mom, right?
He moved in on July 2nd. And his mother, this should have been a huge red flag for me, but it wasn't because I do actually charge extra for this. But he didn't want to put his mother on the lease. And I have a provision in my contract, in my lease agreements, that essentially anybody who is not on the lease is an extra $100 per month to be in the home.
Or do you require background checks on all individuals over 18?
Well, I didn't on her, so it was my mistake. I didn't really look
well,
at she
I
wasn't,
mean, it depends on how the landlord functions.
Yeah,
I mean, some do, some don't.
I normally would. In fact, I would normally require that anybody over the age of 18 must be on the lease, no matter what.
Right. For better protections.
Right. Again,
it's interesting that he even mentioned his mom, because you might have not even known if she was.
Well, I knew of his mother. I had just finished up another house up there, and this is on the news story as well. I just finished up another house in Florissant. Much smaller home, 1,000 square feet. Mm-hmm. Gorgeous little house. I mean, it was on market for 3 days. I mean, it sold really fast. And I showed them that house. And as soon as they walked in, I could see on their faces that, this wasn't for them. I mean, they kind of had that body language of, no, this isn't for us. And they didn't want anything to do with that house. So they opted for the much larger, much more lavished home.
Right.
That's where we were at that point.
So he moves in, and then 30 days goes by, and you show up for the first rent.
You're probably communicating in some way. How's that mean?
He gave me $500 up front, $500 towards the first month's rent, and then from that point on, he went dark. He
never responded to it.
He would respond, and he would even one of his arguments, and he did a lot of text messaging. He liked to record phone calls. So he wanted to have his texts for court. In fact, when we were in court, he did pull his phone out and showed a lot of these texts. But he would say, "Hey, I would like to get together and pay this rent money," and he texted as well. And I'd say, "Great, where can we meet?" I wouldn't mind getting paid. He would never ever show up. Not one time. I gave him a Venmo login. I gave him a Cash App name. I gave him Facebook payments. All the opportunity in the world to make a payment.
So let's just pause here, because I think that this is very important with the strategy. Is he's recording with his phone conversations that, hey, I want to pay you, and with all of the text messages of painting that picture of, I want to do right. I want to pay you. The interesting part is every time that there was an agreement to actually take place, and let's be honest, with Venmo or any type of electronic payment, all you have to do is pay it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Click.
So let's just
why we love it.
Yes, that's why we love it. It makes it very easy. You can do it on your phone, for goodness sake. But I want to just pause, Jeff, for a little bit, because I think it's just so important that this is part of painting the picture that he will use
down the road to extend his stay.
100%.
Yes.
I see where this conversation is kind of going when it's communicating. But now, are you communicating back via those texts? Hey, you didn't show up.
I did. Not only that, but I use MileIQ, and so I'm able to track every single mile that I travel. So the meetings that we set up for him to make a cash payment or however he was going to do it were tracked on my phone. So because I did go back and I was like, oh man, he's got this stuff on his phone. What's going to be my defense here? How are they ever going to know that he didn't pay this? And then I realized, well, I've got MileIQ. So, but yeah, I sat out in front of the house for 2 hours one night waiting for him to show up. We agreed to be there to meet at the house. He was going to make a payment. I don't even know which month it was. Anything past 30 days is just kind of irrelevant at that point. But I sat out in front of the house for 2 hours and never showed up. And he did that countless times.
30 days passes, you're not getting rent, time is going by. Are you are you buying this house? What is happening here? And did you ever reach out to the lender to say, where are we at in this process?
I tried many times. Well, my first red flag after he moved in was I never received earnest money. So my earnest money is due within 3 days after of signing a purchase contract.
So the purchase contract is still in force, by the way.
Correct.
And then we just did this lease agreement in addition to.
Right. So that earnest money was never deposited. It was never escrowed.
So he's already out of contract, so to speak.
Correct. Yeah. So, and he had an explanation for that as well. That explanation was, well, I don't want to pull that out because that's going to affect how much down I'm going to have to put. It's going to pull money out of my savings account. And I tried telling him, like, you understand that that's not going to have an effect on it. That's
interesting. I'm trying to process that, but okay.
There were a lot of little things like that. I fast forward just a little bit. It wasn't until about maybe a couple weeks after that I realized either one, there's much more going on here as far as this lien that he was talking about, or that's when I really started getting the beginning thought of,
the gut starts talking.
Yeah.
So did you reach out to the lender?
I did.
And?
I did multiple times. I actually only spoke with him once. I sent him a couple of emails, and then after that, he went completely dark.
The lender did?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. And I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but you would know who this is.
So the guy's been in there 30 days. Now you're trying to collect the rest of the money. How long was it before you took whatever your next step was?
Yeah, what was the next step?
Was it?
It was a 10-day notice to quit that I posted on the door, and that was at about the 60-day mark, right around the 60-day mark.
60
That's when I
days
really
you posted
realized
a 10-day
notice to quit. It really doesn't have a whole lot of
legal backing.
Right. Yeah, it's just my way of saying, hey, you've got
10 days.
You got 10 days to pay this in full, or I'm starting the eviction process.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So nothing happened
Nothing.
then.
we're
Nothing.
guessing.
I got a bunch of phone
Nothing?
calls
You're
and
not scared.
Phone calls from them.
From them. Yeah, I can't believe you're doing this, and really just trying to guilt trip you and just things like that.
Yikes.
So,
And then
let's see. I don't remember.
So 10 days goes by.
10 days goes by.
And then do
there's
you
nothing.
start the eviction process? Because that in of itself is usually...
I did. Yep. Shortly after that, I started the eviction process. Again, my dates are kind of mixed up, but got a hold of the attorney, paid the attorney, got everything filed. We ended up having the initial hearing was on Halloween Day of 2019.
I mean, appropriate. Very spooky, right?
It's extremely scary.
To be honest with you, I wish I could have concentrated more on Halloween that day. I was like,
I bet so.
But I didn't. So she, I was advised, that I didn't even have to show up for that it was just going to be a hearing. If he didn't show up, I would get the default.
Your attorney advised you that you didn't have to show up.
Correct.
Did your attorney go?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, she did. So, but Jordan actually showed up to the court date.
So Jordan actually showed up.
He did, and contested it.
He did. So again, here's one of those Missouri, I'm going to say Missouri because I don't know every state, loopholes.
Yes.
Right? With evictions is if you show up and contest.
Then what happens? It delays it?
They issue a continuance. The judge will issue a continuance until.
Do they have to have probable or justification or probable cause for their?
I don't know that they do. In this case, he did.
Okay.
Because he had the purchase agreement, so he tried to claim that this was some sort of like a lease option deal or a lease purchase deal, and so the judge immediately goes, okay. This could get into different areas of the law than just eviction court. So the judge, he ordered the continuance.
And how long is a continuance?
That continuance lasted until.
Do they vary?
I think they do. It's just based on workload in the courts. But this one, what was our court date? I think it was.
I want to say it was a long time.
It was December. I think it was December 1st.
So we're talking Halloween.
December 5th is when it was.
Halloween to December 5th.
Yes.
Just over a month later, you show up.
Yep.
In court.
And
now you're acquiring more attorney fees. I bet. By the way.
It wasn't terrible.
Okay.
She's really good, and she's done stuff for me before. So
okay.
But rent lost rent.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what I shouldn't say lost rent, but
lost
income.
Lost
the
income
thing you have to
because
keep in
month to
mind
month.
is we all know when prime season is for selling homes in this area. So, once I get past August, I'm just like, okay, this is it. It's going to be tough to sell this house. I mean, springtime around here is just,
And I think it
it's a frenzy.
depends on where in the city. I mean, we don't find that so much in the city.
True. That's true.
City proper.
Yeah.
So, but yes, we do find that suburbia more.
Right. So we're back at the court date, and at this particular court date, you can still either go through. I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. I'm at a loss for words.
Kind of settle or whatever.
Yeah, settle.
You can
That's
settle.
the word. You can settle.
Who can settle?
If we can agree
two
upon
parties.
something so that it doesn't go to trial.
Plaintiff and defendant, believe it or not, the courts will let you settle it, so they don't have to.
Okay,
take
can we settle it that he gets out? Like,
Well-
what is?
Well, they would have to
They-
agree. So
yeah.
Right.
Okay,
Right, we would have
so-
to-
Jeff would
so-
agree to.
I would agree that he can just get out.
Okay.
It's done.
Right.
You know?
Like if you're
I
out,
wanna
if I
try
can
and
come
play
over
with
there
that.
and see that the place is empty before court, I will cancel the court date.
Right.
Okay.
But instead of settling, he actually, let me go back just 1 second. The day before this court date is when he hired his attorney. So he opted to go to trial. And I'm not kidding. Literally, they were setting up their case while we were sitting in trial. They were going through records and all of this nonsense. And the judge was just like, no, you've had 35 days.
To find somebody and
right.
prep for this. Okay.
Right.
Kudos to the judge for that.
Yeah. The judge was great in this one. But so
wait, so I'm sorry. You think that this was part of his little mastermind tricks?
Yes.
That he was hoping the judge was going to go, oh, you're not ready? Come
Yes.
back in 3
Yeah.
weeks.
Any
I-
type
that's
of,
what I-
any
when you
type
said
of
the day
delay.
before.
that was
Yeah.
his exact plan because, and like I said prior to us actually getting on air here, I can wander off because there's so many things that intertwine with these stories.
Nuances.
Yeah.
And let's keep in mind, we've got the text of I'm trying to pay. I'm trying to pay.
So
So it is interesting. Okay.
So he tries to actually I'm not sure that I can't honestly say that was his intention or a tactic that he used.
Sure.
But he hires the attorney the day before we're set to go to trial, and then asks for another continuance. In the meantime, I had posted in these Facebook groups, these investor Facebook groups, about what was going on and about the eviction, and I posted pictures of them. Be careful of these people. Watch. Here's what's going on. I was just truthful. And so he's in the meantime, while he knows that this court date is coming up, he's reaching out to all these different investors that I know, agents, investors, people that have
Trying to set up a new place, find a new
Yes.
place.
Yes.
Okay. So he's just like,
He's still
if I
working
can
it.
find a new place, he probably would have been out of yours a little
right,
sooner.
right, 100%.
Okay.
Yep. So the judge does not grant the continuance again, so we have to go to trial
That day.
that day.
So December 5th or whatever.
Correct. So I'm sitting in this trial, and this guy just pulls out all the stops. I mean, I'm talking, we spent $80,000 on the rehab on this house. Mm-hmm. This guy, he tried to claim that the house was uninhabitable. That's what he actually said out loud in
Because
court.
there was no past municipal inspection, or because he was saying that
No,
condition
it passed.
was bad? Oh.
It passed. One of the things that happened shortly after he moved in, there's it's got a main level wash area, laundry area, and the little hose bib, one of the hose bibs was leaking. We didn't know. We had no idea. So it had dripped down, and it was a tuck under garage, and it damaged part of the drywall inside of the garage. So I got a plumber out there. We paid to have the hose bib replaced.
While he was in there not paying you.
While he was in there. This
So
was
he still
really
had the
early
goal
on.
to be
This
texting
was
you complaints.
right. Well, this is when he first moved in.
Okay.
Because so we didn't really use any of that plumbing for much of anything. This developed just right after he moved in.
Sure.
So I got over there, we got it fixed, and that was one of the items that he brought up in court, was that the house was uninhabitable because of this water damage.
This water spot, this little bitty.
Yes.
Well,
like,
I tore out the drywall in that spot, cut it out, and just to try and see where it was coming from, let everything dry out really well.
Yeah.
And that was one of the
Okay.
items. He also claimed that the house had extremely low water pressure, and that made it uninhabitable as well. Well, I found out later on, after this was all said and done, I went in the house, I turned on the faucets, and I'm like, yeah, this place has really low water pressure. That's odd. I've never noticed this before. As it turns out, the water meter out front, you do rehab. So you may know this. A lot of those water meters that from the water company has to come out and physically turn on. Most of those valves leak. Almost all of them do. They had, I'd say about 50% is what my experience is. So they actually came out and shut their water off due to non-payment. That valve leaked. The only way they got water in that house was
because
that leaking valve at the street. Correct.
So they're not paying their other bills either.
That is correct. They did leave a bunch of mail there, so I know they have a lot of outstanding bills there.
So is this judge falling for this? I mean, they've seen this all before, right? I mean, you had low water pressure. That's reason to not pay your rent. I mean, this is.
If he was falling for it, he didn't display that at all. I mean,
The judge.
If I could describe the scene in this courtroom to you, when you have an attorney represent you, you speak through your attorney. You almost never, unless you're asked to speak out, you almost never say anything. Your attorney represents you. And this guy was standing up, just making a total, it was just bizarre. It was just a bizarre scene. You could tell he was getting frantic. Things weren't going the way that he wanted them to go.
Yeah,
and
trying to approach you, and when Jeff basically said, "I'm not speaking to you," then he sent his mother, Barbarita Jimerson, over to talk
in
Jeff.
court.
In court.
Yeah.
So
we'll pay you later.
And I just kind of looked at her and I held my hands up. I was like, "I'm sorry, I can't talk to you guys." I just literally anything that came out of their mouths at that point was a plea to get them, to stay in the house. That's all that it was.
So what's the result of this court date or this trial or this? What happens?
I won that. So I knew that I wouldn't. I still know that I'm not going to see any money out of this. And that's not really what I'm after at this point.
Right.
Never really was. I just wanted them out.
Sure.
But you did win the judgment.
I did win the judgment.
So on this specific date, the judge actually awards you a judgment and
an eviction.
Not
an eviction.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, with the so there are two different types of evictions. There's rent and possession, and then there's unlawful detainer. So with rent and possession, if he was able to pay that judgment that day by 5 p.m., he could have actually stayed in the house. I just knew he didn't have the money to do it. So I took my chances.
That's interesting.
Right.
I don't know that I knew that.
Yeah. So the unlawful detainer are the cases where, okay, let's say that you have a lease in place, but, and I'm not an attorney, so I'm going to disclose that. Mm-hmm. But you have a lease in place, but say you want to sell the house or you just want to get out of the business. You have a lease in place that's expired. They're there month to month, but they don't want to leave. You can sue for unlawful detainer and take possession of the house, get them out of the house.
Okay.
So mine was a rent and possession case, though. They had 10 days to pay that back is what it was. So it was another settlement that was offered that they could have paid by 5 p.m. that evening. So they have 10 days to pay that or get out. After that 10 days expires, then you have to call for the sheriff to come out and forcibly evict them.
A couple days or weeks later.
10 days later.
It's all dependent upon their workload.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
for me, it was
a while.
December 30th. It was Monday, December 30th.
Yeah. So you were calling about December 15th. That this court date was December 5th. They had 10 days to come up with the money, or you called the sheriff.
Correct.
So
we're talking. That the sheriff doesn't like to kick people out like right before Christmas and stuff.
Well, it's funny you say that because when I called the sheriff, the initial date they gave me was like January 3rd or something like that. And I just told him, I was like, man, that really stinks because I would really like to have these guys out before then. And he called me back 20 minutes later and he says, we had something open up. We can get you in on December 30th. I was thank you. So they did spend Christmas there, but New Year's they were not able to spend New Year's.
So on December 30th?
Well, that video we see of them moving out.
Yeah, that's December 30th. This is where it gets really interesting.
So they started on December 29th.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I was actually working on another house up in North County. And so, but Chris Nagus with KMOV showed up on the 29th. He wanted to try and get their side of the story. This whole time, they're silent. They don't offer any kind of explanation for what's going on. Chris has tried to contact them, call them. He's tried to find out where where Jordan works, and again, this is where my squirrel brain is going to go off on a different tangent. Nobody ever knows where Jordan works. I did find out where his mother works, and that was at the Lowe's in Baldwin. I can't 100% verify that this was her role, but I was told that she was the head cashier at that Baldwin Lowe's. I actually made a trip up there and spoke with her manager. And I think there was one other person that did the same thing, just to kind of let them know, hey, this is what we're dealing with. This is the kind of person. I mean, she's a lot of money passing through her hands. I don't know. Do what you want with the information.
I see where you're going with that. Okay.
Yeah. So Chris goes out on the 29th, and
that's when we see him fill in their truck.
Well, there were 2 days. They had 2 separate trucks.
Okay.
They had a ton of furniture. I mean, this place was really, really decked
Well,
out.
when you don't pay rent,
Yeah, you can afford,
you can
to have
afford
nice
really
things.
nice things, by the way.
Yeah.
It's
funny
We've
you
been
say
doing
that.
throw that
wrong.
out there just in case you're not good with math. Yeah.
As I'm watching them load this truck, I'm going, wow, look what I bought them. I bought them a 65-inch TV. Awesome.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, it's fantastic.
So you were there the day
And a pool table.
Yeah. I was not
reporter
there
was
on the 29th when they had the big truck. So the way that went down was Chris was there. The movers were, they hired a moving company. The moving company comes in. Well, when Chris shows up, Jordan locks the door. He slams the door, won't let them back in the house to move anything, And so there's a Facebook Live video. One of the movers starts up Facebook Live, and he's kind of explaining what's going on because the cops are there. And, Jordan calls it.
Is this mover a friend or a third party?
Just somebody.
We don't know
we don't know.
Okay.
So
They were hired by Jordan.
right.
Okay.
Right.
So we don't know.
No.
Right.
It's not Jordan's friend, or he wouldn't be doing a Facebook Live kind of
Correct.
playing.
That's
Yeah.
what I was trying. I didn't know if Jordan knew him.
So
or if it-
one of my guys, one of the
Wow,
contractors,
they can afford movers.
they can. Surprising. But one of my contractors is actually.
Movers, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, this
right
is
on.
We're gonna
We're getting
Right on.
we're getting there. We're getting there.
Good call, Adam. Good call. Sorry about that.
Well, one of my guys that actually worked on the house happened to be a member of this Facebook group and said, "Hey, turn it on. You can see what's going on over there." I didn't want to be anywhere near there. I
Right.
just want somebody else to handle it, kind of thing.
Right.
And so I got to watch everything that went on that day. And what you see on that on TV on that
News
6.5
story.
minute
Right,
clip,
right.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually the next day when they're finally that's their last day there. They're getting everything out. I thought they were gone the night before. I showed up over there and I see a big U-Haul parked parked out front.
You showed up over there to meet the sheriff.
Correct. Yep, just to
Change
make
the
sure.
locks.
Correct. Yep. So, I want to go back one second because I want to get into this paying the movers and paying people because this is a pattern here. About what's the date today? Today is
February 6th.
6th.
Thursday.
So approximately 8 weeks ago, part of their scheme is they actually had this house inspected.
Your house.
Correct.
Okay.
By a very, very, very well-known company here in St. Louis. You would know this company.
Sure.
In fact, I don't think it's wrong to say their name because they do great work. It's Pillar to Post.
Oh, yeah. We use them.
So Kevin from Pillar to Post comes out. He inspects it. We go through this whole thing.
And do you make repairs based on the inspection as a normal transaction of
I
the real
did.
estate?
I did. I made
purchasing
some
real
of them
estate?
because at this point I'm kind of, I don't want to get a bunch of money sunk into it when I don't know. I just something just still didn't feel right there.
Right. You have until closing.
Right. Mm-hmm. So Kevin calls me, and this is about 8 weeks from today in the past. He calls me and says, "Hey, do you know how I can get a hold of Jordan Harris?" And I said, "I do, but let me guess. You haven't been paid." And he said, "Well, they attempted to pay, but the information that we got is not valid information."
So did they attempt to pay via check
They
or at
gave one wrong number on their credit card or something?
Credit card. They attempted to pay with a credit card and that's what Kevin told me. So, so that did not go through. And now that was a $600 inspection.
Sure.
And then
The movers.
I got a call. I'm not exactly. I think it was through Facebook because I responded through. Remember when I told you the movers had that live stream going? I responded to the guy that was recording that, and I said, "Give me a call a little bit later on." Because they wanted to know what was going on, and so I ended up talking to him later on. And as it turns out, I don't know what the details of this was, but the owner of the company called me, and apparently there was some shifty business going on with them where they were afraid they weren't going to get paid as well. So they, from what he told me, they were telling Jordan, "We're not unloading this truck until we get paid." And so I'm assuming that he paid them. They moved They moved all of his stuff to a storage facility.
We're keeping the truck
right
until we get paid.
Right. Right. Correct.
That's smart, I guess. But that's legal. I don't know, but that seems.
I don't know that it is, but
But warranted
seemed like a
in
good
this
strategy.
situation. Yeah.
So I mean, I could just
Yeah.
in the news story, you see them pushing lawnmowers into the backyard.
Yeah, the neighbor's yard.
Right. And when they were doing that, I was standing right there. And when they were doing it, I said, there's no way that I just don't think these neighbors, they weren't the kind of neighbors that would loan you or lend you two lawnmowers. Why would they be pushing those into their backyard? And so I went over and knocked on the neighbor's door, and they confirmed, no, those are not our lawnmowers. Well, anything that, after an eviction like that, anything that's left in the house, whether you want it or not, becomes your property. So I went over and got the lawnmowers, put them back in the garage, and then I brought my vehicle back later, I don't know, maybe a week later or something like that, and actually took those lawnmowers home. I was going to try and sell them. And I got a call from Chris again that he was speaking with somebody out in St. Charles that they had done this to as well, that Harris and Jimerson had done this to as well. Oh, and by the way, there was a stolen lawnmower. They stole a brand new lawnmower from them. And I was like, well, crap.
It's probably one of these.
I kind of wanted to sell it. I said, but, put them in touch with me if it's theirs.
You'll take a picture.
Yeah. And I did. I sent him a picture. The big kicker was he was using this lawn care business that he had, this supposed side hustle, this lawn care business, in addition to his primary job. He was using that as income to, for these lenders that he was talking to. He would say, hey, I've got my job, and then I've got a side hustle. I own a lawn service. Now, I can only surmise that those two lawnmowers had something to do with that. I don't know.
So he would basically manufacture income and say,
correct.
Yes.
I make $500 a month mowing lawns or whatever, and that would help his debt-to-income ratio.
Correct.
Else.
You got it. Yep. So I just find it strange.
The pre-approval letters prior to when the lender would have wanted to see, okay, let me see that money hitting your bank account.
Yeah.
Right.
And tax returns and so on and so forth.
So we went through 3 different lenders. One of them was my lender. Keep in mind, I'm still thinking that they're going to buy this house. So I am backing up. I know I'm jumping around a lot, but there's just a lot to be told. After this first guy, I said, we've got to go with somebody else. This guy's gone dark. Let's try my guy.
For the lender. So you never hear back from their lender?
Nope. He just goes completely dark.
No email?
No, nothing. Nothing.
Okay.
0. So I have him talk to my lender. And just...
Well, they actually did.
He did. I didn't want him to... I wasn't necessarily looking for... I was more looking for, well, is this guy going to be qualified given this information? So those two speak. And according to my lender, he's like, if what he's telling me is true, then this shouldn't be a problem. I can probably have this funded in 2 weeks.
So at what point did he talk to your lender? And it's just verbal. So
this is verbal. Yeah, this is. I mean, this is probably. I mean, this is prior to that. I kind of look at that 60-day, that 2-month mark where I go, okay, I'm being scammed. It was sometime prior to that.
Okay.
I said, let's get your information over to him. If anybody can get it done, I know he can get it done. He comes back a couple days later. He says, I found another lender with a very, very well-known company in the St. Louis area. And this guy was just no frills. Here's what it is. I need this information by this date. And if I get it, I can get this done, no problem. Not one shred of paperwork ever showed up at his desk. I have just thread after thread in emails of trying to get this information out of Jordan. So at that point, that was when it finally was real. Like, hey, I got to get this guy out of my house.
So when did you start learning there's other victims? Because
well, hold on.
go ahead.
If you don't mind, I want to keep going with the process. So they moved out that day, and then what happened? Because we'll get into the other victims and stuff.
The eviction day in itself was just a lot of strange behavior.
It was bizarre.
If I may, because I think that this is important. If you've seen the news program, you see some of the hostility in their behavior. We were there at eviction day, ready for the sheriff. We had contractors, and the Chris Nagus News 4 Investigates team was there. What was interesting is that there was some gentleman wearing a mask, like concealing his identity. Instead of them focusing on getting the rest of their belongings and just leaving and just being rid of the situation, what ended up happening is Jordan, we don't know who else, I don't know if it was his mother, and this, I'm just going to call him the masked man, for lack of a better term, came by and literally stalked us while waiting. And they did this many times. Not only that, the gentleman who was masked got out, came up, videoed me in the car, videoed us in the car, videoed my car, videoed our license plates.
Scare tactic.
It's a scare tactic. It was a total intimidation tactic. And did this, like, what was it, like 6 or 8 times? So constantly coming back.
This is all while you're waiting on the sheriff?
Yes.
So I'm going to throw my 2 cents into this. And this is just kind of just an added bonus. I mean, all of this is really irrelevant to the overall this overall story. But so I went armed because the sheriff is only there for 30 minutes. He's got 30 minutes to clear the house, and then whatever happens after that is kind of up to you. So I actually went armed, and Jordan is driving up and down the street 6 or 7 times. They've got tinted windows. I mean, we were all on edge.
He was driving up and down after the sheriff left?
Well, this is before the sheriff even got there.
Okay.
So they got in, and what you saw on the news with them speeding off, that was supposed to be their last hurrah. Like, that was supposed to be them exiting the property and being done with it. But that's not what happened. What happened was they kept driving back and forth. And Jordan was in the driver's seat, back and forth, 6 or 7 times. Mm-hmm. And so they finally left out. I thought they'd had enough. They left out. They were gone for a good while. This last time they left out of the neighborhood.
And this is all before the sheriff got there?
This is all before the sheriff gets there.
Are they trying to evade the sheriff?
No, no, not at all. They were just gone. They were just
okay.
It was just happened to be that they were leaving before the sheriff ever showed up. I'm sitting in the car with her. They hadn't showed up for a while. I said, well, I'm going to take a walk up. My contractors who were there to help me change locks and everything were in front of the house, parked directly in front of the house. So I walked up. Keep in mind I have a sidearm on me, and I walk up and I'm standing at the driver's side door in the street, and I see his car up the street getting ready to turn back down to come down to where we were. So I very, very, very purposefully walked around. I did not want him to see my firearms. First thing that came to my mind, like, he's going to freak out. This is not a good situation. So I walked around to the other side. He pulls down, parks next to her car. The mass marauder gets out again and starts videotaping everything, just harassing, And that gets back in the car. They drive back up. Well, my sidearm's exposed at that point, and as Jordan rolled by, he rolled his window down and he put his fingers in the shape of a gun and said, "I got you," and he kind of made that motion of
gesture of shooting.
Yeah. So at that point, we went ahead and we called the Hazelwood police out, called 911, and we just didn't want to have any part of
the harassment,
a shootout, or anything crazy like that. So they come. They actually cleared the house for us. They were there. They were very, very helpful. I mean, hats off to Hazelwood, because they've been. In the beginning, I actually tried to file a police report with them, and they really didn't even take my name down. But since all of this has come about, I've been in constant contact with them throughout the whole, pretty much the whole thing. They've been fantastic. I mean, just awesome. I had an occupancy inspection done on the house yesterday. It's all passed, ready to go.
It's amazingly, it's not uninhabitable.
Right.
That's shocking
Wow.
news.
As
for the
Surprise,
listener.
surprise.
As we suspected.
Yeah, shocking
Yes.
news.
Yeah.
So did the sheriff finally show up? Did we get these locks changed?
We actually, Hazelwood offered to go in and clear the house for us. And so we told the sheriff, we've got it taken care of. Thank you very much.
Move on to the next.
yeah.
Because he's busy.
Yeah, he was already late because they had 14 evictions scheduled that day.
Yeah.
And so
That's how it goes.
Yeah. We took possession, immediately changed the locks. We put security system on the house, and that was it.
So now what? Have you sold the house?
The house, I actually got an offer on it last night that I turned down. But it is actively, it's on the MLS right
It's listed. Okay. And you're going to, I guess this is where I've got a lot of questions. Shannon probably has questions. But so what are you going to do different when you get your next offer?
My next offer?
I mean, no
Where do
possession.
I
no
begin?
possession prior to closing, no lease.
Absolutely.
Obviously,
See,
but
that's the bad thing.
This
you know
is the sad thing.
that little house I told you that I had finished up, that I showed them as well,
Yes.
that I walked them through. We had a problem at my buyer's title company on that house. And so I said, I can't deal with that title company. Let's just move it to my title company. We'll have it done by Monday. Well, same scenario. The buyer had told her apartment complex, this is my drop dead date. So I said, I knew the money was already escrowed, so I wasn't that worried about it at that point. But I said, you can move in Saturday. We close this on Monday, and it's done. And everything went swimmingly. Like, it was perfect.
You are
not
bold.
everyone's a master malicious intent person.
Yeah.
Well, again, if the
So
funds were
really
escrowed.
at the end of the transaction.
yes,
So, yeah.
yep.
How did you end up on the news?
Well, the Facebook post, someone on the group saw the Facebook post and said, would you be willing to talk to Chris Nagus? And of course, Jeff says yes, because again, I was speaking with you, although, we're kind of ready to just stop. The biggest concern is just getting it out there. So that's how that happened. A viewer made the connection.
Yeah, I put the post out there.
Yeah, I saw the post.
I was just really-
It was interesting.
That was that was just nerve-wracking for me to do, because everyone talks about libel and slander, and I just thought at this point,
You didn't care.
what else?
Yeah, to put
like-
yourself out there and be vulnerable to the comments of the other individuals within the group.
You
to
know
be
what
like,
though?
well,
I've had really good feedback. I mean,
Yeah,
there's one or two
Always.
turds out there that just, I mean,
Yeah.
woulda, shoulda, coulda type stuff, and
yeah,
it's
didn't
not
you do
good.
this?
It
Didn't you
definitely
do that?
bothers me, but
Well, hopefully that's kind of one of the benefits of this sort of like long
coming
form
forward.
interview, because I mentioned this before, but to be totally fair, when I saw that news story, I thought they should have done this, they should have done that, they
That's
should
the
have done
first
this.
reaction.
And
yeah.
talking to you, you're like, I did that, I did that, I did that. It's like,
Yeah.
oh,
right,
okay, I
well.
thought I knew what you did wrong, but
yeah, kind of my reason behind telling you about the little house, letting her get in that house a little bit early, a day early, was that. So I'm fresh off of this really good experience, and they come in and I'm just at this point I'm like putty, I'm like, all right, this is great, I'm rocking and rolling here. She had just quit her job,
Yeah.
and we had, I mean, that month of July, and this is really where it kind of has really had a negative effect on the way that I think and the things I'm able to get done. But she had just quit her job, and we were set. We probably could have made that month and lived for the next year very comfortably.
And our marketing, everything.
That house alone was my marketing for the next year and a half.
Yeah.
Since,
no, we don't have that.
yeah. So since that time, I haven't had a solid paycheck since July because of this.
Speaking of that, are you going to be able to garnish their wages, garnish their bank accounts? Do you have any chance of getting any money from them?
Because you did have that.
Yeah, we would have
The
to
judgment
hire
that
a
was
lawyer,
done.
and we are unable to hire a lawyer to do any of that.
Additional.
Not only that,
Chasing
he's very. I mean, they're just not dumb people. They've been through this many times. Many people have tried to collect judgments on them, and from what I understand, there's been one or two people that have been able to garnish his wages if he doesn't move jobs and not report.
And you can't garnish the mom's wages because she's never on the lease or the contract.
Correct. Well, actually, there is a you can't garnish her wages, they actually tried to bring that up in court, where they said, well, she wasn't on the lease. And then the judge, while we were sitting there, he looked it up through some, whatever law book they use, and found that, it's anybody that's in the home. That's
anybody
that's
in
occupying
the home.
them. Yeah, they
That's
also
good that he looked that up.
Yeah.
That's
Also, before the show, you kind of mentioned that there was some sort of realtors involved. What was the backstory on that?
So actually, I found out when I made that Facebook post, people just came out of the woodwork. I mean, it was just like all day long. People, hey, I've dealt with these guys, and I'm dealing with these guys right now.
Oh, they came out of the woodwork as in they did
Correct.
this to me.
They've had interactions with them.
Or in the process
or they're
of
in
trying
the process
to do it.
Yeah, right.
Oh my gosh.
So this is not a dig on realtors, but this is actually how this all started, was through realtors. And
what way?
What they would do is they would find a house that was listed. Mm-hmm. They would use the realtor, and I don't know if they were like targeting. Anybody can tell what their license number is when they were licensed,
right? Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they knew that or not, so I can't claim that that's what they were doing. But they were targeting homes that were listed, using the realtor to make their offers back and forth.
The listing agent, or did they have
a buyer's agent?
They had their own buyer's agent. So
correct. Well, they would just call. They would call up I don't know if they had one like
agent and say, "When
right,
offer on this house."
Right.
Okay.
Right. And that's exactly how they started doing this. They graduated from that once I think there was kind of in fact, one of the brokers that I spoke with has their pictures placard on the walls in their office. You're not to deal with these people. This is what's going on with these guys. So once that kind of got around and they depleted that resource, they started moving to rent to owns. So landlords that would have a lease, offer a lease option on a house. From what I understand,
like a for sale by owner.
Money.
That I don't know. In fact, I think maybe only one or two of those actually occurred. I don't know how that went down. I can't speak to it. I don't know. And then he started targeting rehabbers. So like for me, when I asked him, how did you even know that? How did you know this house was available? How did you know what's going on? He said, God told me to turn down this street. God told me to turn down the street, and I saw the dumpster. And so that's what he's doing. Those are three
thing, right? So then you thought, oh, this is a good Christian person or whatever.
My gosh, you just see how this weaves. I mean, it was literally once you kind of got to know, or kind of got involved in the situation. He would just like throw a dusting of religion in there, like every once in a while, just enough to make you go, okay.
Yeah, we share the same values.
Yeah,
but yet. That's a lot.
Yeah, it was just, it was good. It was really good.
So more and more people like came out of the woodwork, like investors, homeowners,
correct.
Like that this happened to me. And, how many did you come across?
Well, I found, once I really dug into it, I found out they were using Barbarita's last name for approximately the first 8 of those rough, I don't know that exact amount. And I don't know why they switched to using his name. I can only surmise that they kind of got her name in a bad spot as far as getting these properties rented or however you want to look at it. The point is between the two of them, they had these 16. So I found those 16. So you found 16 people, individuals. Well, I was prompted to go out and really do a deep dive on CaseNet. And so that's how I found all of those. But the people that responded on Facebook, I would say that very first post that you saw, I had at least a dozen, just from that post alone.
Yeah, and then what's the count for how many have said that they're running the other way because of that? I think
I've lost track of that. They would make call after call after call to people out there, and we, bear in mind, we are not connected in any way to these people other than through this Facebook group, and I lost count at how many people they actually talked to about getting into their home.
Yeah, and and the interesting thing is I can't divulge who, but this is with hotels too. They get into a hotel and are forced through an eviction at hotels. So, when we talk about the intent, it's quite interesting.
Hold on. So they go
They
to a
move- they will
hotel,
go
they
into a
check
hotel,
in,
yes.
and they just never check out?
Correct.
Which
Oh,
is,
that's
you
new.
think
In
about
this-
that. It's
in this-
challenging.
Hold a credit card for incidentals or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, if
You
you
can
give
just
a bad
cancel your
credit card,
Yeah, but they run it right then and there.
Or maybe they turn it off or something.
I don't know, but
don't know.
I do know that if you think about the logistics that has to happen, if you're in a hotel, they've got electronic keys that can shut off at any point. So literally, I mean, if you think about this, like this is what goes through my mind anyway. Somebody's always got to be in that room to let people in and out. I don't know. I just think it's
Well, these
well, the
people
fact that-
are doing this in every aspect of their life, not just with their housing, right? They're doing it with
Sounds
lawnmowers
like
and
it.
movers and water bills and everything else.
So, I mean, when you did the background check, though, when you had them sign the lease, did nothing show up? I mean, other than a couple evictions, and did
Well-
now other red flags like judgment after judgment, do those not show up?
the problem with someone named Jordan Harris is there were 4 or 5 pages of Jordan Harris, and
You wanted to believe that those were different Jordan Harris.
well, you don't know which ones are which.
Yeah.
But yeah, so essentially what you're saying, yeah, it's true. And like I said, I did find a couple of evictions on him, and he manned up. He owned up to it, and my mistake for not digging deeper.
yeah. You asked earlier, I mean, it's a total change in process. I mean, you want to try, and if you're in a position where you're running your own business, you want to believe that you can make a difference and do the right thing and help folks that are really wanting the joy of home ownership. And up until this point, Jeff has had amazing experiences with being able to do that and to solve really hard problems. And so where it comes down to this is, I think within the community, and whether you've done it yourself, it's just human nature, is to think, oh, well, I would never do that, or I would never do this, shoulda, woulda, coulda, all that other kind of things. Again, the point of speaking up is it's the malice intent that's involved, and you can just see that there's a weave here of that for folks that really are in a bad spot, that really do need a help because it's 1 or 2 days. It's unfortunate because we will never do this again, ever.
Right.
And so for the folks that we would help, it's kind of, talking about being a little gun shy.
That's the thing.
Once
pun
bitten,
intended.
twice shy.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have a really bad habit. She'll tell you this too. I'm a giving type of person. I like to see the underdog win at risk of myself. I
Right, you
generally
wanna-
like to do that.
Believe the good in people.
Yeah, and it's just it's nothing that I have to think about. It's just my personality, and
Yeah, and it bit us.
she's always telling me, "You're giving too much away. You're giving too much away." And yeah, unfortunately I have to go against what my bones tell me to do now, and I can't do it anymore.
Yep.
As we're trying to wrap up the podcast here, I think we've shared a lot of really good information, but I want to ask if you guys have any perspectives about what, Shannon and I or our company or other listeners, what can we do to help you, or what can we do to help others, in this situation?
First and foremost, if this has happened to you, whether it's these folks or anybody else, contact the Attorney General. If that does not happen, they will not take it seriously, and nothing will come of this. And every victim that's come before us will be for naught. So please,
So the move is contact the Attorney General and sort of file a complaint about these people?
yes, reach out, let them know the details so that they can really start to take action and build a case.
Okay.
Can I offer the attorney?
Please.
If you had any interactions with Jordan Harris or Barbarita Jemerson, where you feel like you've been defrauded or any, as Shelly says, any malintent, you contact John Shields at the Missouri Attorney General's office, and his phone number, his desk number is 314-340-3417, and his mobile number is 573-645-2763. And again, his name is John Shields. He's with the Missouri Attorney General's office here in St. Louis.
Wow. If people want to get a hold of you, you obviously seem like really good people. Maybe would you like them to reach out, or kind of maybe they want to do business with you because you seem like an honest real estate business person?
Sure. I like to work with agents on. It's kind of a. I know I should make this quick, but so I do creative deals. So I work with real estate agents to get those done. So if you or anybody out there has a deal that you just can't get done, maybe you've got a seller that maybe doesn't have the equity to be able to afford a fee, an agent's fee, a buyer or listing agent's fee, get a hold of me. I can still monetize that for you, and we can get the deal done.
Yeah, and Jeff's website is, the company is Missouri Sell now. For the creative financing, it's sub2empire.com. So SUB, 2empire.com.
Correct. Sub2 Empire is actually, let me get this straight. Sub2 Empire is a course I created on subject to investing.
Okay.
So, but Missouri Sell now for the agents out there.
.com.
For the agents out there that would like to monetize some leads maybe that they can't close. That's my specialty. That's what I do.
Love it. And we will reach out to you if you're willing in the future to come on and talk about all that.
100%.
Because I don't think we've talked about subject to stuff at all on the podcast yet. So
he loves it.
100%. It's my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
So thanks again for coming in. And for anyone who's listening, reach out with any questions. We'd love to hear from you. Podcast at HermannLondon.com. And take care.
Bye-bye.